President Jim. It's my pleasure to introduce Tay Anderson to us today. I want to bring you back to RILA, something Jim just mentioned, to give you some context as to why we have Tay speaking to us today. RILA stands for Rotary Youth Leadership Awards. It's a camp that's put on by Rotary. There are RILA camps all over the world. We've been told we have the best RILA camp, and everyone looks to us for process and tools to make their camps awesome as well. And that's a camp that we send 6 to 12 students to a year, primarily from Denver kids. This year, the RILA camp has been canceled, but it is something that has changed the lives of the students that attend. And every year, we typically get students who come to our club and explain why this leadership camp is awesome. And one of the reasons it's awesome is they command the best speakers. So I want to tell you that we had a Denver Kids graduation that was planned this year, and I reached out to my friend Bill Manning, who has been involved in RILA for like 20 years. I believe he is a guest with us today as well. And I said, Bill, give me the best speaker you can. I need a fantastic speaker. I don't even know if I told him the context. And he just right off the bat said Tay Anderson. And I just felt like it was divine intervention because Tay is a student of the Denver Public Schools. He graduated Denver's Manual High School in 2017. But check this out. He is on the Denver Public Schools Board of Directors. Again, he just graduated 3 years ago. Tay is an awesome prodigy. I've heard a number of people speak about how the fact that he's brash and he is someone who likes to make change happen and is polarizing, and that's exactly what we need in leaders these days. And his thing, he is about women's rights, he's about African American rights, Latino rights, LGBTQIA plus rights, and also Indigenous, Muslim, and disabled person rights. So I have a high expectation, Tay, for what you're going to be delivering us today, and I'm just so excited. So on behalf of Rotarians and guests, please welcome Tay Anderson.
Thank you for that warm introduction. It's great to be here. As somebody who went through RILA in high school, it's one of the best experiences that I was able to do. So thank you all for making sure that that was possible for not only just myself, but as other Denver kids. I know they gave me some time today to speak to all of you around the state of Denver Public Schools, but I'm pretty focused on the budget right now. As you all know, Denver Public Schools and school districts across the state of Colorado and across the country are going through significant budget conversations because we are no longer in a space to where we are saying we are in a great position, let's hire more people. Due to the pandemic that we currently are in, we are going to be seeing a decrease in our budget from anywhere from $19 million to $61 million or more. And we are hoping that we're going to work hand in hand with the legislature to really make sure that education is not something that's going to be slashed in funding to fill the state's $3 billion deficit. And so those are some of the things that I want to really speak to you all today. I really want to make this like a Q&A session for you guys so that we can make sure all of your questions are answered as well during the time that I have you. And then for those who don't know, my name is Tay Anderson. I am a proud graduate of Denver's Manual High School. I hope there are some DPS graduates here today. Go Team DPS, as we are celebrating Senior Month in the Denver Public Schools, which means we are celebrating all of the class of 2020 for those who are not being able to walk across the stage in the coming weeks as they were planning to do this school year. And so we are working to make sure that every senior has the best opportunities and the best celebration as possible. A little bit about my journey is that I ran for the Denver School Board in 2017, straight out of high school, and I came up short. I came up in third place with 6,200 votes, and I decided to run for the whole city. I don't know what possessed me to do so. I was saying if you lose one area, small area of the city, to run for the whole thing, and I did. And thanks to Denver voters, 67,213 voters, 82% of Denver's neighborhoods elected me to serve on the Denver School Board for the next 4 years to really make sure that we are having somebody who has direct experience of being one of those students in our classrooms and also a DPS educator after high school. I started off working at Manual High School straight out of graduating, and then transitioned over into first grade. And if anybody has any children or grandchildren, you know that young children are very energetic. And for me, first grade was not the best fit. And so I went into high school and really wanted to make sure that I was able to change students' lives the way that educators changed my life. And so I became one of the restorative practice coordinators at Denver's North High School. Go Vikings, and loved each and every part of it. If I could serve on the DPS board and still work for DPS, I would totally do so. But we make sure that we have no places of conflict of interest in our district. So I currently am only serving on the Denver School Board, and making sure that we are having the most accessible members to the DPS board as possible. And so I'm going to share my screen with you all because I really want to give you guys the visual description of what we are seeing in the DPS school board for our budget, and really want you guys to be able to follow along as so we talk about some of these things. Or can somebody just give me a thumbs up? Ian, I can see you. Or can you give me a thumbs up? Can you see the screen? Cool. All right. So what I'm showing you is our revenue forecast for the next fiscal year, moving into Denver Public Schools. So as you know, we had a reorganization in 2018 after the Denver teacher strike, which means that we diluted some of the admin cost in the district. We let go about 262 positions, and we from central administration, and we rehired about 110 of them in different positions throughout the district. So people they were let go, and then they were able to reapply either to a different job, or we have people that went from instructional superintendents to principals. And so that was the first budget wave that we had in Denver Public Schools to make sure that our educators had a livable wage. What you're seeing in front of you right now is actually today we're going to get our state revenue and our state forecast, but is what was presented to the Board of Education in April. This $19 million is the best case scenario, is for us to say, we're only going to lose $19 million. We can deal with that because we also have reserves. We can help kind of flatline that and get us through the next school year. However, because COVID is still living in our communities, $19 million is actually something that we don't see is going to be the number that we're going to hit. We're actually looking in more of between the 44 and the $61 million deficit. So this means a couple of scenarios that could happen where DPS is planning for a total program decline from 0 to 5%. And so we're looking at different scenarios to make sure that we are doing what we can to save the Denver Public Schools and their budget, as your taxpayer dollars help make sure that we are educating children across the city and county of Denver. On this slide, you're able to see the process that the board goes through. We were presented this on April 16th. We're now in this kind of middle of May. So we are waiting on the updated legislative council forecast, the school finance long bill. That's now going to be like May 26th when the legislature convenes. And so we're in this May area where you see all of the implement budget advisory committee. We got that. And then the big day is going to be on June 11th, is when the Denver School Board will adopt the Board of Education's budget. Right now, because we don't actually have full-time nurses in every one of our Denver schools, I plan to bring an amendment forward to the DPS budget to require that every school must be mandated with one school nurse full-time, because we can no longer have a system where we have one nurse floating between 2 or 3 or more schools a week. And we understand that where we are at currently, it's not okay for the safety of our students or the health of our students in order with coronavirus plaguing our system. And so I'm not going to go through each and every one of these slides. You can find this on board docs. That you can go to board@dpsk12.org and find this under our April 16th board meeting work session. I'm going to go through a couple more of the important slides just so that you guys know. Here are some of the key budget dates that actually shifted. So we have had our update on the budget process, which I'll show you in just a minute. We're waiting on the state forecast. That's where we will know where we're going in the future. And then we already established our budget advisory committee. And now we're just really trying to craft for the Denver, the budget coming into the June month. And so with that, this is kind of just a real deep dive about how much money DPS has lost this so far. We are $11 million in the hole from COVID. However, we are expecting about $14 million from the CARES Act from Washington, D.C. Thank you to our lawmakers for making that happen, and for your voices for pushing lawmakers to make that happen as well. We're trying to get more money to come to education, and so that we are not seeing a huge deficit. One of the biggest things that I would love to just shout out is that since COVID has impacted our communities, Denver Public Schools has fed over 450,000 meals and counting. We average about 12,000 meals a day throughout the city to families that are in need, or anybody that actually wants to come to a food site to pick up food. We have PB&Js, chicken sandwiches, hamburgers, hot dogs, etc. We are trying to feed anybody that comes to our sites, whether you are have kids in the Denver Public Schools or whether you don't, whether if you are just an adult that just needs food, or if you're just somebody who's just in the neighborhood. We will feed you at one of our 24 food sites or one of our delivery stations that we have across the city. That was something that I really fought for, hard for us to really make sure that we were taking into the whole impact of COVID on our communities, because we understand that when our schools are closed, there are students like myself who was a homeless senior in high school who needed DPS to provide a meal. There were nights where it was the only meal I got was through Denver Public Schools. And so those are things that I know that other students, that my story is not unique to Denver Public Schools, and we can make sure that every student has the accessibility to internet, and to also food. We fed, again, 450,000 people and counting, and then we have also distributed 45,000 Chromebooks since the COVID impact has begun in our communities. I'm going to share a couple more slides, and then I really want to just dive into some questions and really talk about what we're looking into in DPS, and especially for next school year. So let me get down to the bottom. Oh, here it is. Just so that you all know, is like this is our expense by type. I know a lot of people say that we spend a lot of money in the administration, which I think we still have funding up there that could come down to the classroom. We have 84% of our compensation of it. This is our expense by type. So this pie chart, 84% is the compensation to all employees. Student direct schools, supplies, and textbooks, that's this 8%. And then you can see the rest. And so these are just the way that we kind of spend our money in DPS. And really, we're a school-led district. So schools really have the autonomy over what's going in their schools. And so we have a couple of scenarios that are going to happen. We can go here's our forecast, right? We could do a 1% change in non-school, non-fixed budget cost. That is about $2 million annually. One of the things that we're thinking about is adjusting school start times. I don't know if you guys have any kids or grandchildren who just complain about getting up and going to school at 7 a.m. in the morning. And so we're working on trying to get some more universal start times, especially for our high schoolers. High schoolers need to start later because that's what scientific facts have proven. And so we actually want to see what we can do like other districts, and maybe go from a 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. For high schools. That's just one option that could be on the table. It could also help us with transportation cost as well. The next thing is what we call school marriages. We called them mergers at first, but we went to the school marriages because it sounded a little bit more friendly. And so we are talking about taking small schools and making them larger schools. And so if there are two schools in a community that are only serving 150 kids each, it makes more sense for us to bring those schools together to serve 300 kids and to give them all the access to the resources that they need in one building instead of having them spread out. And so that's another thing that we are looking at. Another thing is we're going to come to you. It's every 4 years, we come to you and we knock on your door and we ask, well, we probably won't knock on your door this year, but we will ask you for and approval of a bond and mill levy. Now, this bond and mill levy is unique. It's actually a credit to DPS, so you won't actually be raising taxes. And it will say in the ballot language, it says, shall not raise taxes, or whatever the direct language is. It'll make it clear that we're going to credit ourselves. We're not actually going to borrow from taxpayers or ask them to give us more money from their taxes during this time. And 2 more slides. A 3% fund balance from the reserves, using money from that's about $30 million from the reserves to help stabilize the district. That's only a one-time thing. And then we have a 5% reduction of all departments. Trying to see it. Oh, that's not on here. So we have another one that's a 5% reduction on all expenses in the Denver Public Schools. And so those are just like where we're at as a district. And then for next year, I know a lot of people are wondering, will DPS resume classes in the fall? At this point, we are uncertain that we will return to school in the fall. We are looking at doing a mixture of both hybrid and in-person. It's hard to bring 93,000 kids back when the classroom limit is only 10 per classroom now. And so we're trying to work within the guidelines that are given to us. I'm not necessarily in favor of the 10 per class. I want to try to get us to 15 because our classrooms are pretty large. And so it's still, our average classroom has about 35 kids in it. And so it makes it 10 times harder when we're getting guidelines from the federal government and the state government and the city government that says you can't have anybody in a classroom more than 10 people. And we got 93,000 kids. And so this now has a conversation of, do we build more buildings? How do we actually maintain this in the near future? And so right now we're looking at doing a mixture of hybrid and in-person remote learning, and that would be the remote and in-person together mix. And that's why we're not asking for kids to bring their Chromebooks back or to give us their hotspots. We actually, those who we gave hotspots to will have free internet until the end of the school year of next year. And so we are trying to make sure everybody is connected. And if you know anybody that needs a Chromebook, please send me an email. I'm going to put my email in the chat so that we can get them remote learning technology. And if they need internet too, please send us an email so that we can get them a hotspot and so that they're connected as well. And so, I mean, Mr. President, I think that's all I have for you guys today. And I just would love to take some questions to make sure that you all are well informed about how your taxpayer dollars are being spent at the DPS school board level. So thank you guys for having me.
Thank you, Tay. That's wonderful. Well done. And we'll open up to Q&A as you suggested, and Will Snyder is going to manage that for us. So, Will, I'm not seeing
Tay, thank
picture,
you
but
so
I know
very
there.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Thanks, President Jim. Tay, thank you so very much. Appreciate you being here today. Our first question actually is a question and comes from Bill Manning. Bill is a member of the Evergreen Club and has been helping with RILA for the past 16 years. And states simply that Tay was outstanding at RILA. And Bill asked Tay, what was your fondest memory from the last night at RILA?
Oh, the fondest memory from the last night. I will tell you the one that almost killed me was the hike. We took a hike in the latter part of the week, and I thought it was going to be like a nice little hill. But if you've ever been to the YMCA of the Rockies, if you've never been to the mountains, you'll it was my first time in the mountains going up there for RILA, and it was a different experience. But on my last night, I think the best part was just reading. We all had sack bags, and everybody wrote notes to each other of just like, hey, this is something that I really appreciate about you. And they were due on like the last night of RILA. And so I really enjoyed getting to read all of those, and I actually still have them. And so like when I go through really tough days, especially when you're working with school board members, it is hard to work with very like-minded individuals. You would think that it's super easy to just, everybody thinks it thinks the same way. It is 10 times harder to work with somebody who thinks that your idea is great, but they can make it even better. And then like when you're like, no, it's already great already. Why don't we need to make it? So those are the things that I pull out those RILA notes and I read them. I read through them a lot and actually get to talk with a lot of my fellow RILA members that I went to camp with, and we're still very connected. So I highly recommend the experience for anybody that hasn't went.
Wonderful. Thanks, Tay, for sharing that. We really appreciate it. Fellow Rotarians and guests, just a quick reminder that if you go to the participants section down below on the bottom of your screen, click on that. The more button, there's a raise hand feature. If you have a question, please raise your hand there. And then please type your question into the comments section or the chat section of the Zoom down below at the bottom. Our next question comes from Seth Patterson. And Tay, he says, my question is, what mechanisms are planned to deal with the inevitability that everyone's crystal balls are very cloudy, i.e. further adjustments up or down will be needed?
Can I phone in Seth to just give me a little bit more clarity on that question?
Sure you can. One moment.
Yes, I think I'm unmuted. My notion, Tay, that one, thanks for being here. It's a great presentation, and you have an impressive story, my friend. What strikes me is whatever adjustments you make now, you know, a month from now, they will be obsolete and you'll have to readjust to something different. Nobody knows what it's going to look like. So what mechanism does the school board have in place to deal with those, and presumably have to rely on the state legislative forecast, and the legislature won't be in session?
Yeah, and so that's a great, thanks, Seth. That's something that I continue to push for us. So like when we went into remote extended spring break the first time, where we were like, we're going off for 3 weeks, I said, well, let's hold on, but let's not jump the gun right now. We don't know what the impacts are going to be. And so everything is continuously moving at all times. And so like us, if we make, I've already warned that we should not make a premature decision about in-person learning in June if we don't come back to school until August. And so what happens in June may be different than what actually happens in August. What we could see is that June could be the month where we're starting to level out. And if we email all the families and say, we're not coming back to school in the fall, and then in August, it's like, actually, the governor's saying everybody goes back to schools, that's a different, we then have to start talking about what does that look like? We have to recant our decision. So I've been trying to get us to pause on some of those things. When it comes to the budget, we are by law, we have to get a budget to the state, to the JB, I believe this is the JBC, the Joint Budget Committee. We have to get them a budget by June. And so we are like, the budget is just going to have to go. We're pretty good for the next school year. We're talking, most of the impacts that we're talking about are going to happen the 21-22 school year. We're really kind of in an okay position, for this coming school year. And the state legislature, because they recessed, they're coming back on the 26th, and they're required to fill the 2 months that they actually were out. So they can't just like come in, pass the budget, and leave. So we're actually hopeful that the state legislature will be there through hopefully, I believe that's like the second week of July, so that we can really be out there advocating. We've already been told by the Colorado Association of School Boards that the moment the Capitol opens up, school board members need to be there and advocating that we do not slash funding to education. And it's not looking too good, but we want to at least make sure that our voices are heard in that manner. Thanks for the question, Seth.
Thank you, Tay, very much. Our next question comes from Brian Geis. Brian asks, please explain credit ourselves versus raise taxes.
Yeah, great question. And so it was that's actually new to me as well, learning this from our budget department. So instead of, usually what happens is DPS will come and they will say, hey, we would like to raise your taxes X amount in order to do X, Y, and Z for our school system. Because we're in I believe we're still in a good position financially with our financials, we can go to the taxpayers and ask to basically credit ourselves without raising any sort of taxes. So we can go up to about $1 billion in funding for education through taxpayer dollars, but that's not an actual increase to the current taxes that you're paying. It would just be saying, hey, this is what we have. It's kind of like our reserves, right? This is what we have in reserves for said construction, because bond is only for construction. It's only for school improvements. We already know that schools are hot. We have about 60 schools that are unair conditioned. So there's a blessing and a curse with COVID happening in the summer, because if we do go to remote learning and we don't come back in August, we just saved our kids a month of being in those hot schools. The downside is that kids aren't in schools. But when it comes to that bond and MLO question, it's something that I'm going to continue to get more information on. And then once all the questions come in, I'll put my email there. Shoot me that question in the email so I can get you straight to Jim Carpenter, our CFO, and he can give you like the exact legal definition instead of the Tay definition. You're muted, Will.
Thank you so much, Tay. I appreciate that. Our next question comes from Kathy. It says, is the school board considering layoffs as a means of cost reduction, or are jobs secure through the coming school year?
That's a great question. So this school year, we paid everybody, no matter what their position was, through the end of their contract. So everybody's going to get paid until whatever their contract is, whatever their contract ends with DPS. So usually that's in July. And then we're going to start talking about what happens for the next couple school years, whether it's that right now we don't, layoffs are like the worst case scenario. We are talking about pay freezes. So whatever you're making now is what you'll make for the next 3 years, instead of you getting a raise every year like we usually do in DPS. I have suggested that those who are making over a certain amount of money actually take a 10% cut in pay. And I'm looking at individuals that make over $130,000 in our district or more. And so looking at how we can, I understand people work super hard and to get that $130,000, or in some instances $200,000 or $260,000 in DPS. But I think for our children's sake, we could temporarily do a 3-year pay cut and say, hey, we're going to take 10% of your pay to backfill, because right now our paraprofessionals that are only making $12 an hour, they can't afford a pay freeze or a pay cut. We understand that we want people to live and teach in Denver, and right now Denver is a very pricey city to live in unless you already own your home. And so we are looking at all options. The layoffs part is something that we are trying not to do. In the 2008 recession, we were actually in a good place. We actually didn't need to lay anybody off in 2008. And so we're actually still in a really good space for 2020 and for whatever may come after that. But it is always on the table to talk about reduction of staff. But I think we're looking at it through a furlough lens instead of like a you're fired lens. And so we may furlough some people, worst case scenario, temporarily, but then they're still going to have a job within DPS once the furlough would be over.
Thank you, Tay. There's a lot of questions, folks. We're going to try to get through all of them. The next one, Tay, is from Jim Goldbecker, who asks, what has been the greatest challenge for students in the virtual learning environment?
Yeah, great question. I'm going to give you a challenge and a success. So success, we've had attendance has been great. That's been something that's been, so some schools are seeing anywhere up to 98% attendance to 100% attendance on some days. That's unprecedented at times, because we have high schoolers that are very eager to sometimes say, I don't actually need to go to gym class today. And so we actually have virtual gym. It's a very different setting. It's more of like, for our younger kids, we're like, draw a square and throw a ball at the square, and play Foursquare with your parents, or do basketball outside, go for a jog. So that's one of the successes. One of the biggest challenges is the grading system that's going to come with it. And what I mean with that is that we have a unique grading system this semester. We are going to do grades, and we're also going to give kids the options to do credit or no credit. So what that means is that if I am a student, we're not lowering any grades in DPS from April 6th. So let's say if I have 2 A's, a C, a D, and a B, and those are the grades I ended with on April 6th. No grades will go down. They can only go up. So I'm really not going to focus on the 2 A's that I have. I'm going to focus on that C, that B, and that D. And so for that D, I'm really going to put my energy into that class to make sure that I can get it up to being a B or an A. At the end of the school year, let's say if I ended with 3 A's, a B, 2 B's, and a C minus. If I didn't want that C minus to be on my transcript because of what's happened through COVID, we've given them the option to select credit, which means it's not going to impact their GPA. It's only going to say, hey, this person decided they just wanted credit, they didn't want a letter grade, and they can pick that for any class, no matter what the course is. So that's been one of the struggles, is because it creates a system of inequity. We have students that are now trying to use this as COVID, using this as their opportunity to skyrocket to the top of their class, to be ranked number 1. To have a ranking system of students by number, I really don't agree with it, only because we have a system that often makes winners and losers. And in education, we shouldn't have winners or losers. We need to figure out how are we doing our part to educate every student through the unique lens that they learn from, versus it saying, you're the 77th person in your class, you suck. Or you're the first person, you rock. Like, we shouldn't have that mentality. And so people have been using this as an opportunity to go up in the rankings, and we're trying to let them know, like, right now we're working with colleges so that they are going to understand that the real challenges that come from COVID, but also that come with the grading system, and that we're not going to prioritize privilege, or you may have access to something that other students may not have access to.
Thank you, Tay. The next question comes from Don Lewis. Don asks, do you have any impressions of Denver Kids and the impact on DPS?
I think Denver Kids is a great, this is going to be easy. I think Denver Kids is a great organization, and looking forward to partnering in the future, and really want to make sure that we get more kids involved. I think that's something that we need to make sure that continues to happen, is through different organizations that want to support our students. We got to let them know that these organizations exist, and that they are really here to support the whole child.
Thank you, Tay. Wonderful. The next question comes from Andre Von Hall. Andre asked, didn't we turn down a bond issue last year? With the decline in revenues forecasted, you have to do more with less until you have to do everything with nothing. What can we do to ensure Denver's children get the education they deserve? Thank you.
Last year you turned down it was Prop CC, or was it Amendment 7? It was one of the amendments. It was actually going to be a constitutional change to the way that we fund education, or a way that we could fund education in Colorado. So it wasn't actually Denver centric. So Denver actually voted, and Denver has a history of always voting for said tax increases when it comes to education. It's the rest of the state in rural Colorado that rejects it in large numbers, because the biggest fear in rural Colorado is that most of the benefits are only going to happen to the urban districts in the metro area, from the Springs and up the Denver metro area, etc. And so rural districts go out hard to make sure that those typically do not pass. And no matter what the political conversation is around it, we always got to look at it as a lens of, like, what's best for children. And so those are the challenges. And so I talk with my fellow colleagues across the state every time we go to CASB. My first CASB convention was this past December. And I was one of those people that was like, hey, help me understand why we're all here advocating for kids and your district turned this down. And they educated me on it. They were like, look, in history's past, Denver always gets the bigger pot of what we are approving, and it's not equitable. And I totally heard them on that. And so we have to work to make sure that they feel like they're in the conversation. And then to the second part of your question, what we can do is, I think one thing is really finding a local school and figuring out how can you support that local school, whether that be financially, being a reading partner, adopting a student to be like their mentor. Those also go a long way. I had a reading partner in high school, and I also had several different individuals who were there really trying to help in my educational journey. That really helped push me into being the best student that I could be, and eventually led me to serving as a 3-term student body president, and has also led into serving on the Denver School Board, but that was because other people came into school and said, hey, I want to make it possible for you. And I think each and every one of you can go into making sure to figuring out how can I support my local school, because every one of our schools in our communities need as much help as they can get, because we are operating on a very limited amount of money. But I know that together we are able to do more with money, more than money, together with physical interactions with our students, or with being via Zoom. Excuse me.
Thank you, Tay. We've got 3 more questions queued up in the queue. I think we can get to them all today. Felicia, bear with me for a moment. I'm going to queue you up in just a second after this next one, okay? So the next question comes from Barbara Holm. Let me get back to that. Hang on just a second. Bear with me for just a moment. Barbara asked, hey, you made a wonderful presentation, but my question has to do with the achievement gap.
Yep.
Do you think we can best reduce the achievement gap by bringing down the top performers or bringing up the low performers?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Ms. Barbara. So I will say that the achievement gap has a lot of factors, and it's really kind of like the opportunity gap. We call it the opportunity gap now. And so it has a lot of factors that contribute into it, and why we're seeing the discrepancies that we see, but among our affluent students, our white students, and our kids of color. And so one of the biggest things that I've been pushing for is to get more educators of color in the classroom. But the reason why we have a big struggle with that is we don't know in DPS how to actually treat people with dignity and respect at times. And so that is a big criticism of the district that I serve, but it's something that I've been saying for years. And we have to be able to be in a position to where we want educators to teach in DPS and want to stay in DPS. And so I've been working to make sure that we can start recruiting and retaining educators that look like our student population, so that we can actually ensure that students are looking at the classroom and saying, I can see myself in this person, for one. Another thing that we have to do is we have to start talking about the other outside obstacles that play into a child's life. A lot of people think that when you come into the classroom, you're supposed to have a grit mentality and like, hey, get over it and, smile and it'll be great. And a lot of our students, we have 72,932 kids of color in Denver Public Schools. And we have a large majority of students that live in poverty, that they are not focused on like, what's their grade like. They're focused on how are they going to sleep tonight or what's their next meal. And so those are things that we also have to take into effect that contribute to that opportunity gap. And one of the best things that we can do is we need to start trying to make sure that we are getting kids caught up, but also making sure that we're not just getting them caught up for a test score. Our students are larger than just a test score or a number. And so we actually have to make sure that we dismantle that system in order to make sure that students, they have to be engaged with the learning in order for them to be like, this is something that I love to do, and this is something that I'm super engaged in.
Okay, thank you so much. We're going to take a question from Felicia Muftick, and then Ian, I'm going to queue up your question next, so bear with me. One moment. Go ahead, Felicia.
Yes, excuse me, a little frog in the bush, but a question about charter schools. I noticed there's a line item that buzzed right past. It says summary does not include charter schools. And what's the current attitude towards charter schools now? Because there was a huge push for charter schools recently.
Cool.
Did you get it?
I heard some of it, so I'm gonna.
Hello.
I heard some of it, so I'm gonna try to repeat it and just give me a thumbs up on your screen.
Let me repeat it. Yeah. One.
So what I heard is that.
The question I had regarding charter schools,
So I'm going to try to repeat the question, and I'm going to hope that I'm going to get this right. So the question is around charter schools. I think I heard something around our bus pass system, and what we provided in the summer for students for free. And is that going to all students, regardless of charter, innovation, or district run? Was your first question?
You presented And the other part was, what is the general attitude towards charter schools and DPS?
Yeah, great question. So in Denver Public, so the DPS EcoPass system was actually done through the city and county of Denver. And so we didn't actually get to have to pay for any of the free RTD passes that our students got, and all students got them. Whether you just had to have a My Denver card in the city and county of Denver, no matter what school you went to, just be under 18, and you were able to get on the bus pass for free. We're still looking into seeing I have a big push to make sure that we can get kids on buses for free, because that also goes to that opportunity gap problem. Is that some kids with the school choice system that we currently have, some kids have access to get to the school of their choosing, other kids don't. And so that also is a big contributing factor into our achievement gap that we see in our district. And then my general attitude towards charters, I ran on a very strong neighborhood school platform of supporting our neighborhood schools. I don't believe in closing schools at the expense of opening new schools. However, we have charter schools in our district. So I'm going to be the school board member that supports all of our family of schools to make sure that all of them have the opportunity to succeed and to thrive, because those are our kids too. But when it comes down to it, to make sure that if we're the conversation to add more of them, I'm not in favor of adding any more schools in DPS until we can get our budget together. And I'm not in favor of closing schools either. There was one school that we had to take a very, very controversial stance on, was Compass Academy in Southwest Denver. They're a charter school that sits in the
Tay, you froze up on us. If you can hear me.
Houston, we have a problem.
Well, it seems we have lost Tay, Jim, there for the moment. Maybe he'll come back in here.
Okay,
I'll let you
maybe
pick it up
so.
from here,
Maybe
Jim,
so.
okay?
Okay, sounds good. I know there was at least one more question for Tay and perhaps others as well. And sorry that we can't get to all of them. And looks like Tay is now out, so maybe he'll be joining us in just a moment, and I'll wrap things up together with him. While I wait, maybe, Will, you can watch to see if Tay comes back so we can properly thank him.
Sorry, my Wi-Fi crashed.
Oh, there you are. Now you're back, Tay. Very good. No problem. Good. Glad you're able to come back and join us. I think we need to wrap things up at this point, and I know we had more questions for you, and I'm sure the conversation could go further, but we greatly appreciate you being with us today. When I think about this topic you're talking about, not just Denver Public Schools, but education, I can't think of, let me put it this way. I think when it comes to running a nation and a society, something like paying attention to education is certainly at the forefront of perhaps the most valuable things that a population can pay attention to. There are other things that are essential for a good economy and a great society, but what else is more important than the education and the thoughtfulness and wisdom of the people that make up a community? So this topic of Denver Public Schools and education is a complicated one, getting involved in everything from budget to politics and equality and equity. But we really appreciate you coming with us to shed some light on what's going on with the Denver Public School system and the challenge that are faced and the successes that you're having as well. Thank you as well for you stepping up and saying yes to the challenge of being a responsible citizen in our community and being a leader and being a young person dealing with old folks like us. I bet there's some challenges in that way we didn't hear as much about, but thank you and well done. We really appreciate you giving time to us today. So in honor of you being with us today, our club has made a donation to end polio. I've got my badge on today. I can't tell if it's upside down or not, but the eradication of polio around the world. Which is becoming more and more of a challenge in light of what's going on with the coronavirus. But in honor of you speaking with us today, 100 children will be given the inoculation to prevent them from having polio in the future. And that's something we're in together with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So thank you very much, Tay. Well done. Let me move on just to the last couple of announcements we have here. let's see, next week's program, you heard from Brian. Our Secretary Brian talked about it, but next week, just a reminder, we're at 4 o'clock, not at our usual time. And that's so that we can have a bit of a celebratory party environment as we talk about the Denver Rotary Club Foundation and success and announcements over the last year. What's been going on with that? DRCF President and past club President Allison Clark Hardesty will be leading us with that fun time. And watch for further details, but we're hoping that people will come dressed to the occasion with something a little bit festive on your shirt, maybe on your hat, maybe a little facial mask. We can guess who's behind the mask. Anyway, that's not her idea. I'm just throwing that out. Let's finish up here with the four-way test. Of the things we think, say, or do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? With that, we are adjourned. Just a quick reminder to the executive leadership team, we do have our meeting happening right after this, but you need to jump out of this meeting and follow the new link to the other, to the site. It's a different link, but everybody look forward to seeing you next week. Great seeing you today. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.